Today's video is about Theodor Adorno's aesthetic theory, published posthumously. For those who don't know, Adorno was a German Jewish philosopher, particularly associated with the Frankfurt School, which was an institution for social research that had its origins in the early 20th century and lasted in one form or other until fairly recently, although Adorno himself passed away, I think, around 1970. And you could describe the Frankfurt School as, in many cases, although not all, being sort of hopeless Marxists. They agreed with Karl Marx's analysis of degradation of capitalist society, but they often were very pessimistic about potential for change. They didn't see the proletariat as really having any wherewithal to resist the effect of a capitalist society and the culture industry, the world of trashy popular art, music, films that enslaved them, as it were. And Adorno is therefore an odd mix of radical thought, radical philosophy that questions everything, but also sort of conservative values in the kind of art he appreciated, at least in the past, or art from the past. And his tone is often quite sour, quite cutting, but I think has many interesting avenues to explore, particularly in the realm of aesthetic theory. So last time, in the last video, I was talking about Pierre Macquarie's view of the literary work as being objectively determined. And I think one of the most interesting parts of Adorno's aesthetic theory is basically his view of the artwork as being a kind of laboratory for philosophical problems more broadly, including this whole classic philosophical dialectic of the subject and the object, the subjective and the objective. And in terms of art, he would peg Hegel, the philosopher Hegel, as representing the objective view of art, that art is shaped by the objective conditions of a society and its place in history. Although he does talk about Hegel's view as kind of being subjective as well, but he places him on the objective side. And Immanuel Kant's view of art as being subjective, as being about the perceiving individual's disinterested experience of art. And in this way, he wants to challenge this kind of dialectic subject-object, while at the same time saying, but we can't really do without these concepts. And this sort of links into his broader philosophy as he explored in his negative dialectics. It's almost a method which Fredric Jameson, in his book Late Marxism, which is about Adorno, he describes as sort of using concepts in one part of your mind fairly straightforwardly, as they usually have been used, while at the same time in another part of your mind kind of questioning their very existence in themselves. And this is really a continuation of Hegel's dialectical method in many ways, saying, well, a concept isn't anything in itself, it's only has any meaning within the web of relations in which it's embedded. and we need to question those. So what Adorno is saying is he's saying, well, yes, art works, including the very idea of what art even is, which he leaves as an open question. But he's saying artworks are objectively determined by material factors, by bourgeois money, in the case of the classical music tradition, which he had a great affinity to in many ways. Also, something as simple as, well, he uses the illustration of a keyboard, that he says something like all of Bach's works were objectively contained within the keyboard itself, within the notes that had been developed for use in Western music. All of Bach's works were objectively there, as it were. So in many ways, like McKeary, although obviously McKeary was writing, well, actually no, about the same time, to be fair, in this instance. But like McKeary, he says, yes, artworks are objectively determined by a society, and yet at the same time we only know this objectivity through our subjectivity, through our experience of an artwork. And I think this means that we only know something as art through our personal experience of it. If we didn't see it as art, it would be as inconsequential in that way as just seeing a blank wall or maybe a road sign or something like that. And he's saying, well, the subjective experience is how we experience this objectivity, and that's really important to focus on. So for me, the exciting thing about his aesthetic theory, and what keeps me coming back to this book, despite the fact that it is a real slog often in very, very long, unbroken paragraphs, is the way that it can be very hard-nosed, very demystifying in the best sense of the Marxist tradition, while at the same time experiencing art as it's presented to us and not discounting that. That more intuitive side of art, so to speak, that maintains its power to fascinate and grip us. And it's this classic sort of dialectic double nature of art that's crucial to how he sees its function. He would maintain that art, even as it's the product of class struggle or the ruling class's culture to justify their authority, to make them feel that they have a spiritual purpose beyond their money grubbing. Even as it is embedded in that, it also does speak of a utopian possibility of a better way of life, a more harmonious possible future, even as it betrays itself by being embedded within these social structures. So he's not sneering at art as some believe he would be. He is appreciative of it, while at the same time not wanting to get too carried away and say that it is going to be our salvation or something like that. So it's a text worth wrestling with, I found, worth thinking about. A great way in is the transcribed lectures or seminars by Fredric Jameson on aesthetic theory, called Mimesis, Expression, Construction. I'll put that in the description to this video, and maybe you'll find it worthwhile.